Welcome to Real Talk for Real Life, where we're realizing everyone is always learning and living your full experience. I'm your host, Coach C, and this is a Real Talk special edition Divided Discussions, the Nolan Wells case. Can I ask you all something? When did asking questions become offensive? When did grieving become suspicious? When did a mother saying, "Help me understand what happened to my son," become something worthy of ridicule, threats, and attempts to destroy her career? Because that's where we are. Today isn't about picking sides. Today isn't about convicting people in the court of public opinion. Today is about something much simpler: humanity. One of the most dangerous things that social media has done is try to convince us that we have to choose a side before we know the facts. Right now, there's division. Either Nolan drowned and everyone should move on, or something suspicious happened and everyone involved is guilty. We know life rarely works like that. There is a simpler position, and it is, I don't know exactly what happened, but I absolutely understand why his parents have questions. Those aren't contradictory statements. They're called compassion. And I know the race conversation has continued or ensued in this particular case. Let's remove race for just 1 second. Imagine your own child. They leave with friends. They don't come home. Days later, they're found dead. Now imagine there are unanswered questions, different timelines, different recollections, and official investigation still underway. An independent autopsy that did not conclusively determine the cause or manner of death and recommended further investigation. Would you simply say, "Well, I guess that's enough for me"? Most parents wouldn't. Most parents could not. I keep hearing they just need to let it go. No, transparency isn't revenge. Questions aren't convictions. Accountability isn't hatred. The Wells family, through their attorneys, has consistently asked for a thorough and transparent investigation. They have questioned inconsistencies they perceive, retained independent experts, and sought additional forensic review while law enforcement continues its investigation. That's different from saying someone is guilty. Those aren't the same thing. The internet has lost its freaking mind. Now, let me say something that needs to be said. I completely reject threatening anyone connected to this case. Not the friends, not the witnesses, not investigators, not public officials, not grieving parents. Threats don't produce justice, they produce fear. Recent federal cases involving alleged threats toward witnesses and officials show exactly how destructive this has become. And Nolan parents themselves have also faced harassment and attacks while seeking answers. That's crazy. If your pursuit of justice requires terrorizing people, you've already lost your way. Now, let's input race back into the conversation because here's where some people become uncomfortable. Can I prove race influenced this investigation? No. Can anyone honestly prove that it absolutely did not? No. Both statements are true. Given America's history and Mississippi's history in particular, it is understandable that some people ask whether race influenced public perception or investigative urgency. Those questions exist in public discourse, even as no evidence has established yet that race affected investigative decisions in this case. Asking whether race could have played a role is not the same as declaring that it did. Those are two very different conversations. What doesn't add yet? People ask, Coach C, why are you still talking about this? Because there are still questions. The investigation remains open. The official autopsy has not yet been publicly released. Experts retained by the family continue reviewing evidence, including the emergency CTO call. Authorities continue gathering information. That means the story isn't over. When an investigation is still active, it is reasonable for unanswered questions to remain unanswered until the evidence is complete. Here's the bigger issue. Maybe this isn't just about Nolan. Maybe it's about us. We've become so tribal that we've forgotten how to grieve together. If someone asks for accountability, they're called troublemakers. If someone asks questions, they're accused of pushing an agenda. If someone wants evidence, they're told to stop stirring the pot. No, justice has always required questions. Here's my final thoughts. Whether this investigation ultimately concludes that Nolan drowned, whether it uncovers negligence, whether it uncovers something criminal, I don't know, and neither do you. But I know this. Parents don't stop being parents because the funeral is over. Love doesn't stop searching because the headlines slow down. A grieving mother doesn't owe anyone silence just because her questions make other people uncomfortable. If asking for answers offends you more than an 18-year-old losing his life, maybe it's time to ask yourself why. Because humanity should never expire before the investigation does. Here's some fearless homework. This week, ask yourself 3 questions. One, am I reacting to facts or to assumptions? Two, do I give grieving people the same grace I hope others would give to me? Three, can I advocate for truth without abandoning compassion? Remember, justice and compassion are not enemies. In fact, they work best together. Here we go. I'm Coach C, and here's where I stand with all of this. The twists and turns in the timeline are telling. The CTO call raises questions that, in my opinion, deserve careful scrutiny. The behavior of individuals described as Nolan's closest friends has struck me as unusual and difficult to reconcile with what many people might expect after losing someone they cared about. The early public messaging suggesting there was no suspected foul play while the investigation was still unfolding felt premature and irresponsible to me. Public confidence isn't built by appearing to reach conclusions before every question has been answered. The mystery surrounding Nolan's death is maddening, not only for his family, but for everyone who genuinely wants the truth, wherever that truth may lead. Let me be clear. I am not here to convict anyone in the court of public opinion. I don't support threats, harassment, or intimidation directed at anyone involved in this case, especially a grieving family. Every person deserves due process, and every allegation deserves to be tested by evidence, not emotion. At the same time, grieving parents deserve the freedom to ask difficult questions without being attacked for doing so. Seeking answers is not the same as assigning guilt. Justice doesn't justice without answers. Justice requires an impartial, unbiased, thorough, and transparent investigation that follows every lead, examines every inconsistency, and allows the evidence, not assumptions or public opinion or public pressure, to determine what happened. If the investigation ultimately confirms this was a tragic accident, then let the evidence clearly establish that. If the evidence points somewhere else, then let accountability follow. Either way, the Wells family and the public deserve confidence that no stone was left unturned. That's my stance. I'm Coach C, and until every reasonable question has been answered through a fair and transparent process, I believe the pursuit of truth should continue. Until next time, live fearless, keep learning, keep living. This is Real Talk, where we're realizing everyone is always learning and living your full experience. Make sure you're following me on Instagram and Facebook at Real Talk for Real Life for more inspiration, merchandise, and motivation between episodes. This is Coach C. I'll see you in the next one.